welcome everybody. We appreciate everybody being here. So we've done this learning series for a couple of years now, and at the end of last year, we surveyed folks and that attend, and they're online. So welcome to everybody. It's online. I know we have probably 10 or 12 people online this evening too. But we did a survey and said, what topics would you like to have people that are experts in come and talk about? And one of them was self-storage. So tonight we have Jennifer Perkins and her husband Jeremy Perkins, and I don't know exactly what the name of their company is for sure. I don't know if anybody can tell, but I like that. Got to wear the swag when you come to speak. So they in my mind anyway, I kind of consider them to be the experts when it comes to self-storage. So anybody that's got questions, again, we always mention you don't need to wait till the end of our discussion here. Ask questions anytime throughout the conversation here. So I'm just going to lead some conversation, ask some questions, let the experts talk about their experience and so forth. But let's talk about first kind of what got you guys into investing in real estate and so forth, because I know you invest in several of them, several different kind of segments and specialties, and we'll talk about some of that. But I know we want to kind of spend about self-storage, but maybe even before you got into self-storage, what kind of drove you guys to say, hey, you know what, I think real estate is a way to develop passive income, and our whole concept is accelerating generational wealth, right? To be able to pass down and I know you have a couple of young children, and so to be able to pass that down. So kind of tell us a little bit of your story to start with. So.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we both have had a passion for real estate and real estate development since we've met, and we met over 10 years ago.
2011.
Yeah, 2011. So 12 years ago. Before that, I'd got my feet wet in real estate by just purchasing my first home and kind of just living there, renovating a little bit. My background is in construction. So renovate a little bit, live there, sell for a profit, and then buy another house and continue to move that direction. I would then also I'd got my general contractor's license in 2010 and worked for a lot of other investors and developers building custom homes, apartment complex remodels, commercial work, build outs, things like that. So really got a lot of good advice and direction from guys that were in the business, and then being boots on the ground there, involved with them during the decision making and different processes like that, really got my wheels spinning on the possibilities, especially finding out that one of the biggest missing links for the developers and investors is the builders. So having that link in house kind of clicked in my mind of we might have an opportunity here to do bigger and better things than just construction. And so after Jennifer and I had got together, I found out that she had a big passion for real estate development as well. She's studied, different things. I'll let her talk about her experience, but that kind of leads us up to where we met.
Yeah. And so I first learned about real estate and real estate investing whenever I lived in Germany from 2005 to 2011. I worked for the military, and I was going to school for business. And I read a book by Robert Kiyosaki, not Rich Dad Poor Dad. I've never heard of that one, but it was a bestseller at the time. Donald Trump co-authored it, and it was called Why We Want You to Be Rich. And I thought, what a silly title. Like, why would they want me to be rich? Because if I have money, that means less money for them, right? Like, that was my mindset at the time. That's the way a lot of people feel. And so I was like, I'm going to get this book, and it's either going to put me to sleep or keep me up. So I had a long flight ahead of me. And so I read that book. I read it straight through, and I was just hooked. And I had a list of Kiyosaki books. So then I read all the Rich Dad stuff, bought the cash flow games, read a bunch of other recommended books. And so I lived in Germany for 6 years and I didn't have the opportunity to buy real estate there. So it was just a learning experience, like study up and then get educated. So when I come back to the US, I can hopefully get involved in real estate. And I didn't have any influence in my family on owning real estate. We grew up really poor and I didn't have any mentors. So it took me a while to figure out like who the people were, like how to get educated in real estate. I didn't know anything about groups like this at that time. And so 2011, I moved to the US, Jeremy and I met, and we started a business together. It failed. I went to worked several jobs. He continued doing construction, working for other investors. And then we, started house hacking and then, planned to go on the path of the new investor, right? House hack, get a rental or two, flip or two, get small portfolio, sell that, get a bigger portfolio, that sort of direction. But we luckily got into commercial real estate in a situation where there was this property. It was a house and 8 acres and it was an old farm is what it used to be. And my dad knew the guy and he's an older guy and he had planned to just sell it and move to the beach and retire. And it was a fixer upper. It was a mess. There were squirrels living in the house. So fixed up the house that we're living in and sold it and made $10,000 and made a down payment on that property in that house of $10,000 seller financing with a 1-year balloon because didn't have good credit and got him to agree to that. He tried to back out the day of closing. And but it worked out. Moved into that house with the squirrels and fixed it up. And 1 year later paid him off what we owed him and had enough cash out of that refi to pay for a feasibility study for self-storage facility. And so in that time we were researching, right? Like this is a property on a highway, gets a lot of traffic. I don't know anything about cows, so probably not a good farmer. And asked around, like, what do you think we should do with this, to like the brokers and the mayor and just people that knew the town. And everyone's like, storage, you should do storage. Storage is a cash cow. Never heard of that before, but at the time, right, because we had only done smaller stuff and a little bit of construction. And so looked into it and found out like it's kind of a small niche community, and like there's a self-storage association in every state and they give you your lease and they have meetings and tell you what vendors to use. And there's expos. There's an expo going on right now in Vegas that anyone who's in self-storage is typically at, but us. But anyways, got the feasibility study, got the loan, got an SBA 7A loan. If you don't know what that is, it requires a smaller equity injection. So typically you only have to put in like 10% instead of 20%. And we actually used the land. So we had refied, subdivided, rezoned from agricultural to commercial. And so we took what was worth maybe 50,000, now it's worth 250. And we used that equity in that land as our down payment. And so off the bat, we were in this development project, with no money in because of that cash out refi and the equity in the land. Got the SBA loan, built our first phase, which was 223 units, stabilized that in about 11 months. And then right now we're finishing up, we just added another 300 and something units, and it'll take us about 30 months to stabilize that. And then we have another development project that's an 80,000 square foot facility in the pipeline. And so that's our self-storage timeline. And in the meantime, like we build houses, we do luxury homes. I have my real estate license just for us as investors. We got a portfolio of homes. We have a mobile home park that we're redeveloping into storage. And, we're just opportunistic investors. I listen to him talk about industrial, and both of us are like, oh my gosh, we're in a great spot. Or we can build an industrial warehouse. Are you kidding me? Like that's what we're going to do.
One of our goals is industrial, getting into triple net lease warehousing, and would love to throw up 4 walls and lease it out for 30 years.
Yeah, if you're gonna ask our recommendation, that's what you ought to do.
That's where we're
not
with self-storage and
and if you got some land and then can build some, what they call that, flex space, where you have the multi-tenant industrial stuff. So anywhere 2,500 square to 4,000 square feet. That's so hard to find, but it's in such a huge need.
Yep.
Right now.
That's what our town is known for, industrial employment.
Right, yeah,
Dixon.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we had the opportunity. A few years back, happens to be Mr. Ryan right there, but he had one of those flex spaces that was in one of those industrials that he owned and we were like, hey, we would love to list that thing, and we ended up listing it and got, I don't know what it was, 45, I don't know what it was, 40,000 more or whatever, but we got into a bidding war on his property, but it is one of those flex spaces, right? But they're just so hard to find.
Mhm.
Yeah, so if you have land, that would be that'd be a huge recommendation.
The right
for you
zoning.
there, so, yeah,
Right.
yeah, so,
Fortunately, we do have experience with that, and
Yeah.
that is everyone's hang up, right? Going
Yeah.
through zoning and the NIMBYism. If you don't know what NIMBYism stands for, everybody wants storage, but not in my backyard.
yeah,
Yeah.
It's the NIMBYism, so that's why it's hard to get the zoning.
yeah. So you guys decided, hey, let's go ahead and, since we own this acreage, let's go ahead and, and build it.
Mhm.
So like you say, there's, organizations in each state. So who here kind of said, hey, did you have a mentor that kind of walked you through that, or was just,
Well,
okay,
we
we're
worked with,
reading and studying and let's go for it?
it's just a combination of several different people, because again, we didn't know really what we were doing. We were
Yeah.
definitely not the expert in the space when we were getting started.
Right.
So we just
Yeah.
used our network and reached out to, we had some friends that had built some self-storage in Alabama.
Mm.
So reached out to him, asked him a lot of questions. He actually let us see some of his build costs and different things.
Yeah.
The way that he was underwriting the deal, things like that was very helpful in the beginning. Trial and error through the first phase, we took some hard lessons that we learned, and now we've implemented
Yeah.
solutions into our second phase.
Yeah.
And so, it's been a process.
So the first phase, how many units, self-storage units?
That was 223, and then the way
Wow,
we
so
built
you-
it out is.
So you really went big,
Yeah,
even on the first phase.
Yeah, I like to say development is like baking. Like if you're gonna bake, you gotta have egg and flour and baking powder and a whisk and a bowl to make a cupcake. So if you gotta have all that stuff and do all the things, you might as well be making a whole cake. And that's the way we feel about development.
And so, remind me again, how long did it take you from once you started to get that fully stabilized, the first
Yeah, so
phase
well,
one?
so the
from construction.
construction was supposed to take 6 months, but it technically really took more like 10 months for the first phase. And then it took about 11 months to stabilize. It was projected at 17 months, but that was my job. Like I quit my W-2 job to be the manager there. And my salary was like $21,000. So it was rice and beans. And then I wasn't making a whole lot more than that at the time. I worked at State Farm selling insurance. So I took a pay cut and went to work for myself as the manager. And the way the SBA loan is set up is you have to have a budget for a manager and they expect you to hire a manager. But on the other end, you've got to have this W-2 job and good DTI and credit and all that stuff. And so I was like, well, why am I going to hire somebody when I can do it? Nobody's going to do it better than me. And what are they going to do? They already funded the loan. So I went to work for myself and quit my job and, worked really hard to get stabilized fast. And then after we got to that point, I was like, why am I sitting in this office? Nobody needs to be here all the time. I get like 2 phone calls a day and nobody comes in and out of here. So I'll go get my real estate license and then I'll sell real estate and make an income there. And, I'm saving money because I'm not paying someone to run this facility. And at that time, it was before COVID, there wasn't remote facilities at that time. Now they're almost all remote. Instead of having somebody sit there, everyone figured out after COVID that they didn't need somebody sitting there in that office all day long. They just need someone to answer the phone, call center, website, and, give them a free lock and someone to clean the units when people vacate.
So with your background in construction, so did you guys build that first phase too?
Well, the first phase, all I had was a residential license.
Yeah,
So we planned on working with a commercial contractor and then really just taking our business and dividing commercial work and
Yeah.
residential work into 2 sections.
Yeah.
Well, that became a bit of a nightmare with the contractor to do
Yeah.
that. So I just went ahead and got my commercial license and we're building the second phase ourselves.
yeah. Now, so you're adding 300.
That's
So,
whatever.
so right to the 200 you already have.
Mhm.
So then what kind of research did you do to say, hey, we think we can build 300 and it's gonna support.
Well, the first 200 or the 224 or whatever
Yeah.
is all drive up units. The 300 we only added a small amount, 3 more small buildings of drive up units, and about 200 and something of those units, we built a 2-story climate control building.
Uh-huh,
And so we got all the information that we needed really during the first phase, and then solidified during the second phase from a feasibility study.
yeah,
They kind of just laid out, what the demand is based on the supply and the things that are in the
Yeah.
pipeline and all of those different data points, market data analysis. I mean,
Yeah.
it's probably 70, 80 pages of information and data that tells us, gives us the green or red light, and then tells us, unit mix and what the projected demand is and what we need. So
how many 10x8s or 10x15s or 10x20, whatever.
Yeah, we learned, so we did this storage thing and learned about a feasibility study. And I don't know if anyone here has ever had a feasibility study for anything, but I didn't realize that feasibility studies are you have to have them for an SBA loan. It's required. But it's very common in storage to get a feasibility study because it's your blueprint to success. It tells you your pro forma, like when you're going to break even, when you're going to stabilize. And we didn't learn until after that. We wholesaled a multifamily development project. Of course, we didn't know anything about multifamily at the time, and still are kind of greenhorns there. But I thought, oh, okay, I'll get a feasibility study for this multifamily development, and that's how we're going to package it and sell it. And everyone's like, well, what feasibility study for multifamily? It wasn't like industry standard like it is with storage. So we definitely learned it's not just I don't know if it's not common or if it's specific to storage to get a feasibility study. You could probably answer that.
Yeah, it is very much for self-storage,
Yeah.
not so much on multifamily.
But it's like you almost,
which is
unless
another
you get
advantage. It's another advantage of self-storage because it is so simple that, these market analysis can almost nail it down to whether it's feasible or not and give you all the data points you need. And then you can make quick decisions and move, you can move more, I guess, confidently, knowing that you have a good product that's in demand. If you just follow, the directions that are given to you. And so that for me is just, it's been great because like she said, or like you guys stated, in multifamily, you don't really have that direction because there's so many different variables. It's hard for an expert to, point out everything in every situation. So
the feasibility study will say too, hey, this area can support this many climate controlled and.
Yeah,
things like
because
that, right?
storage is an accessory to housing, so for this population and this many homes, then the demand would be this, and then, build in how much storage is existing and in the pipeline. It literally tells you need to add exactly this many square footage, and then they'll build it out to what type of units you should put. Should it be all climate, non-climate, what sizing, how should you price it? I mean, when we were leasing it up, I would get that study out and I would be like, all right, we're on month 3. This is what it says here for my marketing budget. Let me check my bookkeeping here and compare the two and look at where we're at. And I would just look at it every month. It was just so helpful.
Yeah, so pretty much dead on, then spot on.
Well, we were ahead, right? Because
it's
we're
very
really
conservative,
aggressive,
which is great too.
Yeah.
but
I
it's
mean,
very
from our first
helpful because you just don't know. You don't even think, well, should I have a marketing budget for storage?
Yeah. And some of those things we were able to cut back on, like she mentioned, that we didn't quite need as much of, and we were able to play with the numbers. But as long as, we had a benchmark that we needed to live by or do business by, as long as we can come under and meet our goals,
I know we'd survive,
it gave us somewhere, especially being new to the game and new to self-storage at the time and really having blinders on, this is trial and error on the first go. It gave us something to, like I said, have a benchmark to work towards.
So is there certain kind of software, or is there a company that you guys,
for management.
that you subscribe to for just the feasibility?
No, we hire a consultant to do that because that software is really expensive and they pay,
Yeah,
for that.
She does all of our underwriting and she's about got it down enough to where we kind of do when we're looking at deals now, she does a pre-study herself just to see if it's even feasible to send it to the feasibility guy.
yeah,
And then we pretty much know by the time it gets into his hands that our ducks are in a row and it's probably more than likely gonna work. And
so
so
do they take into kind of consideration everything that's coming and gonna be built, that we know there's gonna be 2 500 or 300 unit
They
apartment
do,
complexes coming in, so we know.
they'll do some
this is
digging with the
gonna-
cities and
Yeah.
counties and things like that, but, you know, they want us to go out and be boots on the ground and really put our ear down and find out also, because not everything is always
they won't
channeled
have
directly
anything.
through
Yeah.
municipalities, but yeah.
If you're looking for a tool to like just play around and try to figure it out yourself, Radius Plus, you can get on. It's I don't know if it's the plus, I think it's Radius spelled out and then the +sign.com, but just Google it. And you, when you sign up for that, you initially get like so many free credits. And so you can like drop a radius on an area and it'll loop, and you can message them and they'll take you through free training on it. And so you can play around with that and kind of see what's around, what's in the pipeline. And it's not perfect. For instance, like if there's an existing 3-story building, they're only going to factor in 1 story because they're doing an aerial on the, you know, the roof there. And so you kind of got to know the area. And that's another reason that we really only like to work in like our little bubble, because we know what's happening there. We know what the demand is, what's going to work and what's not.
And I also say that like the competitive market is only typically 3 miles. We sometimes look 5 miles out. But the radius is super small, so people always
Yeah,
say,
if
well,
you're-
self-storage is going up everywhere, but that's because there's houses everywhere, especially in a dense community,
Population, yeah.
like Nashville, when everything's vertical.
Yeah, right here,
Once you
you're
do a
doing
lot.
1 mile. Out here, out Dixon, where we are, you might do a 7 mile. You know, it just depends on, like, our first facility, it's on a highway that everyone's got 100 acres around it. But there's the traffic, right? They're going back and forth from our town to Nashville. So that's where the demand, so they do a greater demand radius, and that's how it made sense.